Just when I think I've finished the preserving season, we find that we have one more thing to do. We're actually preserving some of our homegrown potatoes here. We're dicing them up and letting them soak for about an hour. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more about the process and why I'm doing this in just a minute. While those potatoes were soaking, I knew that I had to go down to the garden. I had seen that there were some pumpkins that were ready to harvest, and I was afraid that if I left them in the garden too long, that worms or other things would start to eat through the tough outer skin, and then they would not store. This type of pumpkin is called a Long Island cheese, and they are super, super hardy plants. While I was looking at some of these vines here, I noticed that there was actually a lot of damage from squash vine borers. They were covered in squash bugs. But you can see this pumpkin here is beautiful, and in just a little while I am going to show you how many pumpkins we've actually gotten off about 5 plants this year. So I'm just kind of going through and looking for some more pumpkins in here, and Vincent's going to come down and actually help me carry these guys up. It's important when you cut these that you leave a good amount of the stem on, and you do not want to damage that stem at all. If you do, then the pumpkin won't store. It'll actually just begin to rot. What I like about this pumpkin is that it stores extremely well. I've grown sugar pie pumpkins in the past, and those tend to rot by about November. But these pumpkins have lasted all the way into December and March for me, and I actually didn't have any signs of rotting on them. I did decide to go ahead and puree them and get them into my freezer at that point, just because it was a really slow time of year, but I think I could have left them a little bit longer. So I really, really love this type of pumpkin. While I was down here, I remembered that I needed to water in some of my cover crops. What you can see mainly in this garden are all of my fall crops. Pretty much everything from the summer has been ripped out, except for those pumpkin vines that you saw me kind of going through there a minute ago. But this row here actually has some cover crop in it. I didn't have anything to plant in this row, and I wanted to kind of help enrich my soil and, you know, kind of give myself the best chance next season without having to bring in a lot of compost. I'm not sure how much compost we'll have next year just from the plant material that we're composting. So I thought cover crops would be a great way to help sort of amend my soil. What I planted here was a pea and oat mix from Johnny Seeds, and I really like this type of a cover crop. One thing that's really hard with cover crops is the termination, or basically killing them off. You have to really know how you're going to do that. Some cover crops require you to sort of like bend them over at the base, and then you can take tarps and sort of just let those cover crops die out and use that as a ground mulch and plant right into that. I'm not really at that step yet where I am really confident about using cover crops. So the reason I went with the pea and oat mix is because I know that it will winter kill here in South Carolina, which basically means my temperatures are going to get cold enough. The pea and oats will grow up enough to produce some good organic matter. And then when we get our hard freezes, it will kill that crop, and they will kind of just compost in place. And in the springtime, if there's any residue left, I'll just go ahead and sort of like till that in, or just kind of move it into my soil. So it's going to add some good organic matter, and then it's also going to fix nitrogen into my soil. Growing in this garden for about 4 to 5 seasons now, I'm sure that the soil is depleted. I'm finding that I have to add more and more fertilizers as I'm planting things, and so I am really hoping that this cover crop will give me some good results next year. And I'm hoping to kind of expand my knowledge on these. I was thinking of perhaps doing a ryegrass in my tomato area, since I had to rip those tomatoes out later. You really want to plant the pea and oats about 6 weeks before your last frost. But the ryegrass, you can actually wait till your first frost and plant that, and you'll still get some good germination on that. When we came in from the garden, I got my pumpkins all washed up here, and I'm going to actually put them in the dining room. That tends to be the place where we are kind of storing a lot of our overflow right now. We probably have about 200 pounds of sweet potatoes in another area of the house. I did have my Yukon Gold potatoes here that you see soaking. Those were in my closet underneath my my hanging clothes. And what actually happened with the potatoes was that I went into the closet to find some birthday presents for one of my daughters, and I accidentally reached into the potato box and realized, oh no, all of my potatoes are going soft. Last year when we had potatoes, they were so they had so much disease that I wasn't able to really keep any in storage. I had to get them all frozen and put in the freezer. So this year I'm actually going to try a different method with them, and I'm actually going to do something called dry canning with them. And I'm going to show you that process here in just a minute after I get these pumpkins taken care of. So here is my beautiful dining room that I told you that I'm basically using for overflow. We have all kinds of things in here. My pantries and canning closet and laundry room shelves are just full of everything that I have. These are just some of our dried beans. I still have many, many more to harvest in the garden. I've got a lot of jams and jellies on this shelf. Marinara sauces. I have a lot of grape juice and salsas over here. And then you can see I have racks of pumpkins. I still need to put my garlic into storage, and then just more pumpkins and some butternut squash. So that's really our overflow room right now. So with these potatoes, after I've soaked them and drained them and rinsed them, and then soaked them again for another hour, and then rinse them and drain them again, I'm laying them out on this towel just to get any excess moisture off of them. It's really important to make sure that your potatoes are not completely dry, but you don't want them sopping wet in this process. I've actually never canned potatoes this way, and I learned this from a website online, and it's from the Canning Diva, and she actually found this on a Facebook group and went ahead and tweaked the recipe, and she canned it up, and then she actually sent it off for independent testing at a lab to make sure that it was going to be safe. Sometimes there's certain rules that you have to follow with certain things, or, you can't can this product because perhaps the heat won't penetrate the food all the way, and so they're not sure that that food is going to be preserved properly, and they don't want to cause any foodborne illness. So she actually had this product sent off, and they did in fact say that this was a safe canning process. So I'm leaving the skins on, which typically you don't want to do, but in her website and her research, they found that as long as you scrubbed the skins well enough, that there was no excess bacterial load on them and it didn't cause any foodborne illness. So I went ahead and left the skins on, making it a little bit easier for ourselves here. After these potatoes are pretty dry, I'm going to put them back into my bowl, and this is where I'm going to season them. You can use salt and pepper, you can use garlic powder, garlic salt, onion powder. I only used salt and pepper for this. I don't really like to add any aromatics when I'm canning stuff because sometimes the canning process can really intensify those flavors, so I would rather add those spices after when I'm opening that product to consume it, instead of taking the chance of investing all of that time in this process and then opening a jar and saying, gosh, that really doesn't taste fantastic. So anyways, I'm just mixing these all up, making sure they are nice and coated, and then I'm going to get them into my jars. And like I said, this is a dry canning process, so there's actually not going to be any liquid that I'm going to cover these with. It's a pretty cool technique. And now I'm going to start putting these in my jar. They say you want to maintain about 1 inch of headspace, and I'm just getting these potatoes in there and I'm trying to pack them in. They will, as they cook, sort of shrink up a little bit and create more space in the jar. And so I didn't want any really large air pockets. I wanted to get the most bang for my buck, and because I am really running out of room to store food, I wanted to make sure that each of these quarts was packed as full as possible. I processed these in my pressure canner for 40 minutes for my quart-sized jars, and when they came out, I was a little uncertain if they were going to seal. I had read and seen that a few people online had had some issues with their jars sealing with this method, but luckily all of mine did. And by the time that I was done with this process, I got up early the next morning to get some more potatoes soaking. I actually ended up getting 39 quarts from the potatoes that I had, And then I took the best of what potatoes I had in my closet, and I'm actually going to try to save those for seeds next year. I'm not sure what next year is going to bring as far as prices for seed potatoes, or if there'll be any issues with supply. But I know that this year at my farmer's market or at my local farm store, they actually ran out fairly quickly. So I want to be certain that I have enough for myself. And if these don't work out, I may try planting some organic potatoes from the grocery store and see if that might work this year, because seed potatoes, oh gosh, they tend to be a bit pricey. This year I planted 50 pounds of seed potatoes. I didn't quite get the yield that I was hoping for, but that 50-pound bag was pretty pricey. So I think just buying them from the grocery store would probably be a better deal. But if I can make it work with what I have and kind of preserve those potatoes as seed potatoes, I'm thinking maybe in my basement where it is the humidity is controlled and the temperature stays nice and cool. So I'm hoping that that will work for me. And so you can kind of see here, here's the final process. They look like really nice golden potatoes, and I can't wait to try these. People say they love them just taken out of the jar and fried up, or you can take them and mash them, or some people have even used these as potatoes for potato salad. So I'm really excited that I was kind of forced to do this. It'll be a new technique for me if they turn out great, and sometimes that's just how you go about preserving food and learning what you can and can't do. Sometimes you can things and they're great, and sometimes you can things and they're not. So I will definitely give you guys an update on these. And the weekend just wouldn't be complete without an unexpected task popping up. We had some shingles that we noticed that were slipping down on the back of our garage roof. And what had happened is when they were installed, they were nailed in the wrong places. It's really important to do proper nailing on shingles. So these ones keep breaking off, and so I keep getting up on the roof to fix them. So kind of a pain, but we get through it. There's literally a line on the shingle that tells you where to nail it. So I'm not sure why the roofers didn't know that, but they nailed them way too high. So they keep slipping down. So we keep fixing them and nailing them in the right places. So this night, after I did all of those potatoes, I needed a quick dinner. I had a few tomatoes that were ripening on my countertops in my laundry room. So I went ahead and grabbed those, and I'm just going to make a quick tomato soup. Now, if I wasn't so tired, I would roast these tomatoes just to kind of concentrate that flavor, but I am pretty tired here, so I'm just taking them. I'm kind of cutting out any bad parts on the skin. A lot of my tomatoes had, imperfections on them or splits, or some of them were heirloom tomatoes where they just weren't super beautiful, and I really don't want to put that in my blender. So I'm cutting off all the bad spots. We're going to get these in there. I'm going to add some tomato paste, and I'm also going to add some mozzarella cheese and some natural sea salt and about 1.5 cups of hot water. And then I'm going to throw this on my Vitamix, and just the friction of the blades on the Vitamix blending up this soup will make it piping hot, and it'll be a beautiful, almost bisque-like tomato soup. We love to eat this with grated cheese, also with some fresh basil leaves, and it's just a really quick and easy meal, and I feel really good about my family eating it because it's super healthy. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me today, and I hope you enjoyed this video.